Good afternoon. Thank you for joining in and welcome
So this is the data basically which the World Bank has collected. These data were based on the phone surveys, and those phone numbers were taken from this kind of surveys that was done earlier. This Poshan Abhiyan monitoring and state of Aadhar report. So they were sourced from this, and 6 states were actually used for the survey. Okay. These are the states that where the surveys were done, and these are the kind of a poverty estimates which can give you a feel of exactly from where the migrations is happening, from which state to the other states. Okay, so this is a data set which is more important to actually explain. So as you can see over here, the data are collected of this. There are introduction of households, there are migration data, there's a consumption data, there's a labor and income data, the agriculture data on access to relief and health and demographics. Just to give one example, the migration data, they were asked that how many of them have returned home at present, and how many of them are trying to return home or unable to for any reason. So basically the questionnaire, in the questionnaire they were asked that how many of them have gone out in terms of search of jobs and how many of them return back. So we are using that as a kind of a variable for the reverse migration. If there are more than one people coming back, then there is a reverse migration for that particular household. So that is how we are modeling. As far as other data are concerned, these are the kind of data that are there in the surveys. So there were many variables, but the data, because of being a phone survey, are not very dense. So there is a problem. So we have to clear lots of data, the data, to come out with some kind of a results. So what we are modeling is that the fact that the Y variable over here is basically if in that household there is a reverse migration. That means if there are people are coming back to their rural household. So it becomes a kind of a logistic regression. That is what we are modeling. Okay, coming back to the results. So these are the results of the first round, second round, and third round. I'll explain those. So as we can see over here, these are the variables that came up after toggling with multi-community, with parsimonious, with the kind of results that we get. What we have is that the migration depends on the age. Quite significantly on the household size. The higher the household size, more is the reverse migration. It depends on the caste, whether it is a scheduled caste or scheduled tribe. In this case, you see, if it is a scheduled caste, they are less likely to come back. Then reverse migration will be negative. That means less. While in case of scheduled tribe or OBC, the migration will be more. It also depends on religion, in the sense that in contrast, or taking Hindu as the base, the Muslims are more likely to actually reverse migrate. The Christian, no. I mean, less, very significantly actually. The Christians are not likely to come back. While in case of Buddhism, they are likely to come back. In Jainism, not very significant. Okay, they were also asked if they are a participant of a self-help group. If you are a member of a self-help group, then if it is, then they are more likely to come back. If they are from these particular states, as you can see over here, UP, Bihar, Rajasthan, in comparison with the UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, in comparison with Rajasthan, they are more likely to come back, and very significantly. Okay, so what is the takeaway from here? The takeaway is that what we find is the reverse migration happens on some kind of caste, religion, on lines, in the sense that these are the groups that more likely to reverse migrate or less likely to reverse migrate. Okay, so let me go to the second round. In the second round, what we see is that we have similarly model the reverse migration, and we can see that those kind of caste lines or religion lines are not there. What we find is that people are more now conscious of economic, what are the economic gains of coming back. They are more conscious whether there is a manrega available in the rural setup, in their home. It is more about the household size is there. It is very significant. But and the states are also important. So, and whether they are getting food from this some of the self-help group or not. So that also becomes a significant. Although it is basically, if the household says that they are getting food from some self-help group, then the reverse migration has to be less, because obviously reason that the people who have migrated know that their people who are staying back are actually taken care of, because they do not have to depend on the remittances. Okay, if we go to the third round, we see that those socioeconomic profile of the migrants, those are not any significance, but more about what is their consumption during the lockdown, what is about their age is there, whether they are getting any kind of help from the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, or whether they are getting medical facilities from the some relief help group and the states, and whether they have a ration card or not in terms of BPL, and in terms of the this is all in comparison of one base, basically the above poverty line. So that becomes significant. So what is the takeaway from all these things? As I told you in one of the schematic diagram, the first round of survey was done when the lockdown was there, while the second and the third one round when the lockdown was not there. So as you can see from the data, the first round survey, the more about the caste, the reverse migration is explained more along the caste lines or religious line. The socio-economic profile of the migrants becomes prominent. While as we go to the second and third, the reverse migration is not so significant. In fact, in the third round, if you see the goodness of it is not at all significant. So obviously the reverse migration is not happening in a significant way during the second and third. If at all any migrations are happening, that is because in the third survey, that is because of maybe because of the seasonal pattern, in the sense that some of them come back during a festive season, or maybe because of some kind of marriage in the household or whatever reasons, but not because of any of those. The reverse migration is not happening because of because of the lockdown as such, because the mobility by that time is now through. So therefore, to come to our conclusion, the determinants of this reverse migration is more along the caste or religion, or their socio-economic profile becomes an important factor and the reverse migration is happening because of that. In the second round, the migrants are relying more on the community level association and their social networks. So not so much about their socio-economic profile as such. And in the third round, it basically it mimics the routine travel during the traditional harvest or festive season. In fact, the third round survey corresponds to that harvest season as well. So in a way, the results reinforce the theory of transnationalism, because reverse migration during the lockdown did happen, and and in this case, as we can see, at a subnational level, because those theories were more about between the nations, but within the nation also this actually happens. The point over here is that as per the lessons for the government is to implement the prompt ameliorative actions while dealing with the future pandemic, because during the pandemic, when there was a lockdown, the government did not foresee the problem as such. I mean, they were lacking in terms of laws. Even if the laws were there, they were not implemented, which I can talk later on if there are some questions. And there were a lot of applications to the Supreme Court asking for help about these migrants. And then after some hesitancy, the government came up with certain provisions like which Shri Shailesh Pathak will actually be talking more about that. So my point is just to show that actually there was a lack of a social good provided by the government in terms of transitory shelter or income support during the pandemic, which could have helped or which could have stopped this reverse migration to a certain extent. So the point that I'm trying to make over here is, if there are questions, I can take more. But there was one point that I like to make at this point is that in various places where I presented this work, one of the questions that always used to come is, why is this reverse migration happening along the caste or maybe on the religion line? So there are some crude answers. One answer I could say is that fact that if you see the plumbing work, the plumbing are all basically from a state of Orissa. If you see the carpentry work, it is more from Bihar. So basically, the work there is a nice mapping of the work with the religious lines or with the caste lines. This is anecdotally true. But if I were to find more kind of modeling answer to this, it comes from the sorting or the peer effect. Sorting basically says that even if there are even if the people are moderately are moderately tolerant, even in that case, the cities tend to segregate along religious line or maybe along the racial lines. One example that I can give you is that this is a map of New York, as you can see. So the red dots are the Caucasians, which are the whites, and this green and this blue dots are the black Africans. So you can see the whole city of New York is somehow segregated. The blacks staying in one place, and even if they are tolerant in the city of New York, they are obviously very tolerant, but still that segregation happens. And it is very simple to explain the segregation in the sense that when the migrant come to a city for the first time, they would stay with their relatives. So obviously there is always a segregation. Well, but that does not fully explain why is the reverse migration happening along the caste lines or maybe along the religious line. So that explanation comes from the peer effect, which basically says yes, just the peer effect, which basically says that actually, to give you an example, if I am a non-smoker and if my friend circle is mostly smokers, then over time, if my threshold is low, my threshold of proclivity to smoke is low, then obviously I'll turn to a smoker. So and the vice versa. So the peer effect is that mostly if the threshold, because of the urban because of the city infrastructure, lack of city infrastructure is very less. If the threshold is very less for the people, and if some of them migrate, then it becomes a herd effect in terms of the others also migrate. So there is a peer effect. So based on this sorting and peer effect, one can explain the reason of reverse migration along the.
Talk about it true for Pakistan.
Okay.
Also. Okay.
Okay. So if there are any questions, I will take it forward. So maybe I leave the for the next.
Thank you, Saumen sir. We request the audience to kindly, if do you have any questions, you might post it in the chat box, or if we encourage you to interact at the end of this webinar. So we go to our second speaker, Shri Shailesh K Pathak sir. Sir is going to speak on policy implications for the better governance of future cities.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Right. Dr. Saumen, may I request you to?
Yes. Give me a.
Yeah. So introductory remarks, very simple. On this call, and there are quite a few people. The city that you went to school in was half the size of the city that you're living in today. So, let's say in Coimbatore, size is double. And Coimbatore size will be double of today's size. And now this is have stopped growing. The problem is that we seem to be taking our lessons from London and New York. So most of this population is not because people are having children and family sizes are increasing. Most of this increase in population in Indian cities is because of migration.
Just 1 minute. Is the slide visible? I mean,
yes, it is.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
it is.
Yes.
You can put it on slideshow.
Okay.
And this migration is largely because over the next 20 years, most of Indian agricultural labor is going to move to cities where they will make more money. And my 3 slides are only about how to ease this process of migrants coming into cities instead of cities becoming effectively slums. And you are aware, and I am aware, that tiny solutions of you who go are not possible given our democratic setup. So how do you make this process easier? Next slide, please. And let me hasten to add that I'm not a professor, Dr. Saumen is. So I will talk more about practice than theory, right? This is just a glimpse of the last 20 odd years, 2000 to 2020. You'd see that the population in cities is growing much higher than the, just take two very familiar names for rich Indians, London and New York. So if you look at the side of the slide, London has an annual addition of 76,000 people. Delhi has 10 times that. New York has 41,000 people on an annual basis. Bangalore has nearly 4 lakh times that. And therefore, when we talk about urban governance, when we talk about governance, a lot of taking lessons from today's London and today's New York, which are absolutely irrelevant for cities in India that are growing by 3.5%, for more than 4% per annum. So look from recently urbanized cities in China and manage that, of course, apart from the hookup. So shall I move to my next slide, please, Dr. Sharma? Yeah. A lot of people is from the belly, their eyes. You could.
So you're not audible right now. Pathak sir, you're not audible right now.
Should we take questions now? I mean, and wait for him to come back?
Sure, sir. We have one question in the chat box. Megha, can you please read it?
Is for Majumdar, sir. Dr. Anil Kumar Sharma is asking, sir, it's clear that the major factors of migration in the country are pull. Reverse migration was noted during COVID-19. As we are looking for 2047, how it will be possible if imbalance in development process be continued? How can we overcome such obstacles to achieve in future? Sir, reverse migration is less now. Economic and sociological aspects will be continued for long. Please clear.
Yes. Oh, okay. Oh, so you're back. Okay, I'll take this question later on then.
Right.
Okay, please
Right.
continue then.
Sorry.
You can continue. I was
Yeah.
in your absence. Somehow the connection was not was a problem. So you can continue. Maybe I'll take the question later on.
Right.
Yes, sir. We can continue.
So if you're a migrant, typically you'll look for livelihoods in a city, you'll look for a place to stay, and for around 1 to 2 years, by which time you'll start skilling yourself, you'll pick up a higher income bracket, houses 10 people, to a room that houses 5 people. And then hopefully 2 or 3 years down the line, you'll make enough money to getting your or getting married. And typically, there's a lot of literature on this. Is male. Saumen has a slide on that. But once male is established in the city, then the female married or children joins them. And I'm sure that you have come across your share of migrants who've been in this for 20 years. Children have had the best of education, and so on and so forth. So the question that National Center for Good Governance and this cohort of really bright people, I'm sure, has discussed is how to make this process of migration smoother. India is not going to be out of low income with so many people in agriculture. So India will become Viksit Bharat. India will become Viksit Bharat only when not more than 20% is in agriculture. And therefore, we like urbanization through migration is going to be a defining feature of the next 30 years of your career and my career. And here I'll go back to the presentation by Dr. Saumen. For me, the reverse migration during COVID was point number 2 on this slide, livelihood. So these 4 people sitting on somewhere, where the Tiru walked village and my roots. Yeah. Was there a question?
Sir, just wanted to say that your voice is broken, so maybe if you switch off the camera, the connection would improve. Maybe.
All right. I think that makes a lot of sense. Let me switch off.
Yes.
Okay. The signal is better now. Yeah.
Yes, sir. It is 10% better.
Change my different. Okay, but so the question now is, how do we migration into Indian cities is going to come in case, given we want fewer people in agriculture? How do we make this process simpler? And I have a few suggestions. Right. So I'll let you read this and I'll explain this one at a time. Right. So let me start with the primary reason why during COVID was they did not have the local MLA or the local or the local councillor or mayor or the minister actually did not appreciate, essentially invisible to the politician. And the simplest is to the Tirupur voter list or the Guru election list. Much simpler. what was what the question was said that if there are people from UP are working in Kerala, they need to go back to UP and Bihar to vote, which is absurd under law. If I'm resident anywhere for more than a certain length of time, I can happily get my name on the voter list. And this is how we can make migrants politically less invisible. So more on that after. So point number one is, what do we have today that we did not have in 2020 when the first yeah. Essentially, so under the e-Shram portal, Dr. Saumen, I asked you this as a quiz. How many people do you think have registered under the e-Shram portal? Dr. Sorry, I think you're on mute.
Some 30 crores, I guess.
Yeah. So 300 population of China and the US. More than, except these two, there's more than population of all countries in the world. So 30 crore people on the e-Shram portal. In fact, one good thing that all of you can do is make sure that all your drivers and maids and every other informal worker goes and registers on e-Shram. So given this, we can actually use either Aadhaar or the UAN, which is the Unified Account Number, generated under e-Shram for each and every migrant. For each and every migrant. How do you track a migrant? Telephone number. But the unique ID telephone numbers can change. The unique ID is the Aadhaar, and the unique ID now is the UAN. Now, given Supreme Court and its tendency to talk about Aadhaar, it's easier probably to talk about UAN because UAN is again linked to Aadhaar. So, can we map livelihood opportunities in different cities? Can we match the e-Shram portal inventory of willing labor to these livelihood opportunities? And in every group of, let's say, 100 people, migrants, there will be 10 or 15 outstanding people. So an unskilled migrant usually comes to a city to work in construction because that requires very little skill, carrying bricks or whatever. But even when I have spent some time in construction and infrastructure, we are mechanizing very rapidly. And therefore, skilled construction workers command a much higher premium than unskilled. So how do you use the same e-Shram database to start skilling these people, either in the city once they're there, or even before the city, in semi-rural or para-urban areas? So that demand-supply mismatch is a huge problem for the private sector today. Most of my friends in various industries, when they look for qualified labor, they really have a tough time, right? So going to the third thing, which is accommodation. As I said, typically first 1 to 3, 1 second. Yeah. So in accommodation, now that we have UAN, we can have transit houses in major cities. We all know the destination cities. Chin and others have work in migration. Most cities that migrants are well known. They're in the west of the country and the south of the country, and probably Delhi NCR. And the origin states are pretty much 5 or 6 states with high birth rates. So can we have Aadhar-enabled transit houses where say someone coming from Chhattisgarh as a transit house, all that migrant needs to do is show either the Aadhar or the UAN, and no questions asked. That person can have a soft landing or a very concessional rate of accommodation for the first 1 month. And the maximum that she or he, mostly he, can spend in their transit house is 1 to 3 months. In fact, going forward, this can be offered to state governments. Today, in the different states have made their pavilions. The government of Chhattisgarh can be offered a transit house accommodation in Bangalore, and anyone coming from Chhattisgarh will be probably encouraged to transit house for a very concessional rate. The second thing that can be done is public transit, because first thing is accommodation, the second thing is livelihood, but in order to get that livelihood, you need to use public transit. So can the UAN be linked to a public transit card so that migrants find it easier in the first 2 or 3 months? After the first 90, 100 days, almost all smart migrants find their feet. If they don't, they go back to the village. Finally, there's going to be a supplier of labor, largely skilled labor, to the rest of the world. And we already have examples of people, Bihar and UP, actually going to the Gulf and taking over the job earlier done by Kerala immigrants. But these people require a much higher level of skill. So within these cities, let's say Tiruchirappalli, let's say Bangalore, let's say Gurgaon, we have focused upskilling centers for the same migrants who are the top of the class and enable them to go and work. I mean, my favorite example, for instance, is nurses. So elder care is going to be a boom industry because most countries are, declining in population. I'll share a number with you. China, a friend of mine put up a business in China, manufacturing medical devices for newborn children. So, when infant is born, for the first 48 hours, you attach this medical device to the infant. And 48 hours later, you know whether the infant is healthy or not. So this gentleman put the factory up in Shanghai in 2016-17. And at that time, the births in China were 16 million, that is 1.6 crores in 2016. And he assumed a 1%, 2% growth rate. In 2023, from 1.6 crore, it came down to 19 lakhs. So 16 million to 9 million. That's the kind of decline that most countries are having. Europe even more so, Japan and Korea even more so. So our girls can actually make a lot of money as nurses in Japan and Korea. And I'm 100% sure 20 years down the line in China as well. So effectively, what I'm saying is leverage the migrant, skill the migrant, contribute to the city, contribute to the economy. That's all from me, Saumen. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. There are a couple of questions we can see in the chat box. I request my colleague Megha to just start with the Pathak sir's question. There is a question in the chat box.
Dr. Anil Kumar Sharma is asking, cities are expanding while villages are shrinking. Reasons are described by you, sir. Such causes be continued if authorities will not take any action plan, whether the concept for rural upliftment was explained by Gandhiji. Indian cities will expand rapidly if villages are deprived or remain far away from modern facilities as well as opportunities. Policies must be special basis. Sir, how can villages be developed where India's soul lives? Should we strengthen our regional and sectoral planning in the favor of rural development in large scale, keeping balance in all areas at priority?
Right. So let me immediately assure Dr. Anil Kumar Sharma that we all have great respect for Gandhiji. But Gandhiji did not live in 2025. And the country that we live in is very different from the country that Gandhiji lived in between 1915 and 1948. So this, Dr. Sharma, is a typical transition that almost all countries go through. The US in 1800, the United States of America, had pretty much 85 to 90% rural population. Today, it has between 8 to 10% rural population. And you will see this in all countries in their growth paths. The number of people living in villages decline and the number of people living in cities goes up. Let me just take a snap poll right now. There are around 40 people in this call. How many of you are living in villages today? Please raise your virtual.
So, sir has asked a question from the audience. Just by raising your hand using the app, you can indicate how many of you who have joined this webinar are from villages, are staying in villages right now.
Staying in villages. My grandfather wore a dhoti. He was in farming. Will I wear a dhoti and go and live in the same village? That is my question. Today, are you living in a village and practicing agriculture or non-farm labor? No. And therefore, with all respect, Dr. Shivkumar is probably not in there. So, with all respect, Gandhiji, we'll just wait for it. Yeah. All right. So, Dr. Shivkumar, please, with all due respect, look at the states in India. Which are the richer states, which are the poorer states? The richer states are invariably more urbanized. So, which are the top urban states in India? Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Karnataka, Andhra. And which are the poorest states in India? Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, UP. Where do you think urbanization is more? So, while we should definitely look at the whole of India approach, but the job opportunities are not happening in villages. I have not heard of anyone migrating from a city to a village in search of jobs or livelihoods. So there I'll leave that. And under the Constitution, there is a specific vision for a district planning committee, which amalgamates the rural and the urban. I think the spatial planning that you're talking about, Dr. Sharma, will be well served under the Constitution. That's all for now.
So there's a question. It is not specified for whom it is. The question says, how can nations and cities address the challenges posed by international migration, such as overpopulation, strain on resources, and lack of opportunities, while ensuring the development and growth of the youth in an era of limited infrastructure and economic disparity?
Right. A very good question. And just to go back to my prior answer, in the census of 2011, we had a 31% share of cities. We're going to have a census in the next 1 year. This 31% is easily going to be upwards of 35 to 40%. And according to, I did a paper in Oxford in 2011. According to my understanding, by around 2042, we will hit 50%. And then it'll be even more expensive. How can nations and cities address the challenge posed by international migration? Look, India does not have a problem of international migration. India has a problem of illegal migrants from largely one country. But India does not have this problem of international migration, of international migrants coming into India. This problem actually is in Europe. This problem is, to a certain extent, till last week, it was in the US. India's challenge is different. In fact, most of migration within India is largely from the same state. It is not from out of the state. So if you look at the migration into Mumbai, if you look at the migration to Bangalore, if you look at the migration into Hyderabad, into Chennai, it will largely be from Maharashtra or Karnataka or Telangana, Andhra or Tamil Nadu. People moving from outside the state are fewer. And look at a state like Kerala. Kerala is a unique case because Kerala's people are migrating to the Gulf. And people from Bihar and UP and West Bengal and Assam are migrating to Kerala in search of opportunities. So today, Kerala government is operating Hindi medium schools for the children of migrants from these areas. And those migrants and those children are learning good Malayalam so that in the next generation, they will be equally proficient. And I have stayed 4 years in Chennai. A lot of Tamil people in Chennai have learned Hindi because they have to work with the labor that talks only Hindi. Overpopulation, strain on resources, lack of opportunities. Look, migration never happens when there is no opportunity. Factor for migration. These people are going to a city so that they can make more money than they are making in the village. Since our cities are growing so rapidly, and they'll double in the next 20, 30 years, as I said, urban planners and good governance experts need to really tackle one of the biggest problems that we're going to have, which is, are we having cities or are we having slums? Thank you.
So there is a question for Majumdar, sir. Sir, it says, it's clear that the major factors of migration in the country are pull. Reverse migration was noted during COVID-19. As we are looking for 2047, how it will be possible if imbalance in development process be continued? How can we overcome such obstacles to achieve in future? Sir, reverse migration is less now. Economic and sociological aspects will be continued for long. Please clear.
Yes, as I was telling during the last part of the presentation, to explain this reverse migration, one can fall back on certain of this agent-based modeling that I told about, which is basically sorting or the peer effect. Now, if you look at the peer effect model, which is basically, as I gave you a small example, in the sense that if the threshold level of the people is very low, then given any awkward situation, in some cases the riot happens, in some cases the riot does not happen. That's because basically the threshold being very low in one case, people react violently, and therefore other people also join in. So the point over here is that reverse migration happened because the threshold level of the people to migrate back was very low, and given the situation, adverse situation that was there in the city, because of the lack of basically the infrastructure, because of the lack of livelihood, because of the lack of housing, so that therefore some people started moving, and because of the peer effect, the people also started moving. So the only answer for this is that you have to expand the city in terms of making more provisions of the public good, in terms of housing, in terms of livelihood, in terms of many voluntary organizations, or in terms of any social kind of network, to make people stay, so that even if there is a shock, if this kind of shock was to recur again, then people, the threshold value will be slightly higher, and the people will not start migrating, and that herd effect will not happen. The peer effect will not take place. So basically, the only solution is, as Shailesh Pathak also explained, in that you have to have some kind of provisions in terms of housing, in terms of livelihood, in terms of all other urban kind of infrastructure, which can make the people stay back in terms of whenever there is a loss of livelihood, and these things were lacking during the COVID time. In fact, during the COVID time, the government did not anticipate that this kind of problem will be there. They were not able to identify the people, the reverse migrants, and they were not able to identify them. In fact, because of the lack of there were many rules or laws that were there, but it was not implemented, and people, the government was unable to actually identify them and give them the help that they could have given, if they were identified, people started moving on the railway lines because none of the state government wanted to fund the trains to the mobility was a problem. So basically infrastructure, I mean, in some kind of infrastructure which can help the people to stay back in terms of adverse situation, like housing, or like and now what Shri Shailesh Pathak said about the fact that you can connect them with the UAN, so that kind of help can be given to them. So these are the things that one has to put more emphasis on in order to stop this reverse migration later on. Provision of social good, I guess that is the key thing.
And if I can add, Dr. Saumen, reverse migration will happen when the migrant stops earning money in the city he or she is in. So tomorrow, China can be trusted to launch another virus. So suppose you have another epidemic and the city goes into lockdown, definitely there'll be another reverse migration unless these people are part of the local election roll, the voter roll, and then the MLA will say, please don't go, I will take care of you, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yes,
since-
and I add one more over here. I went through one paper which was basically on disasters. I mean, when there was an earthquake in Nepal. So that paper actually, the results of the paper actually, the takeaway was that if there was some kind of voluntary organization and people's participation in the voluntary organization, maybe if there is one volunteer, like as you are saying, the MLA or somebody who is actually involved in the whole process, that the recovery from the disaster is faster. So voluntary participation, self-help groups, social networks, and some kind of people's participation into it, actually among the people, I mean, some volunteer among the people, in terms of filling up the forms, in terms of to get the help from the government, from the various from the various schemes of the government. I mean, those kind of things actually help post recovery after a disaster. So I guess the point also is that voluntary participation, some kind of social network, also could be of some help to stop this kind of reverse migration. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So
Madam,
there's
There's
I'm aware
another.
we're at 12:57.
Yes,
My
sir.
submission to Manish Sharma ji is that this issue of illegal immigration from a particular neighbor is not new. In fact, there are court cases and reports from various governors going back 20, 30 years. So I suggest that we have a separate hours discussion. This is an answer which is um, a very challenging task. But the only thing is that every country should do what is right for that country. India should do what is right for India. Bangladesh should do what is right for Bangladesh. And we will always give priority to our own citizens compared to others. Today, compared to 10 years ago, we have a unique ID for everyone, which is not a proof of citizenship. Maybe it is time to graduate to proofs of citizenship so that it is easier to identify illegal migrants. Thank you.
Very well put, sir. So, as pointed out, it is almost one. So, we can come to the conclusion of this webinar, the fifth webinar. It was really an honor to have you both here and to have introduced this subject of migration. We covered many issues, stories of assimilation, transnationalism, and sir pointed out that the cities should not turn into slums. One more additional point, maybe from my side, would be that we need to observe that if the urbanization or urban spaces are expanding, there's a lot of urban waste, and by urban waste I mean the infrastructural waste, the buildings that are being vacated, be it was like a mall or a government office previously, and now it is moved to a new building. So we need to be mindful about the expansion of urban spaces, infrastructurally speaking, and because of the opportunities, of course, the expansion of urban space will continue. Thank you once again, Saumen sir and Pathak sir, for giving us time. And I hope all the audiences and the participants, dignitaries who joined us enjoyed the sessions as much as we did sitting here. And this is a monthly event. So this time it was with the help of IIM Tiruchirappalli. We would be doing IIM Kashipur next month. So thank you once again to everybody who joined, and thank you especially to the expert speakers. So thank
Okay.
you, sir. You will
Thank
be
you.
closed.
Thank you.
Thank you.